Welcome to HubnSpoke, the podcast for busy marketers looking to get more leads and sales. Discover the latest from the world of content marketing and social media. Here are your hosts from the Kingdom, Zaahn Johnson and Adam Steinhardt.
Hey, Adam Steinhardt. Welcome to episode 43.
Zaahn Johnson, thanks so much for that wonderful introduction.
Cecilia, hey?
Cecilia nailed it, yeah, smashed it.
She's doing well. I think we'll have her back next week.
Good idea.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me today.
Great.
We're going to go back to basics.
Awesome.
Take the listeners back to where it all began.
Do we have, is it like one of those episodes in Happy Days where they go back and recount? Flashback episode.
I love flashbacks.
It's a flashback episode, people.
Excellent.
Very excited.
So listeners, get comfortable, grab a cup of tea, sit down and enjoy the ride.
Doing a flashback.
Once upon a time, there was a little Hub and Spoke podcast.
Correct. That was 42 episodes ago. It was actually a year ago, so yeah.
So what we're going to do is just talk about why we called the podcast what we called it, because whenever we tell people what the name of our podcast is, we launch into the reasons why. So I think it's a really good idea to help the listeners remember why we've called the podcast what we've called it.
HubnSpoke. Okay, so Zaahn, it's actually made up of two words with an and in the middle. Hub and spoke. And
so we couldn't get the Twitter name.
Correct, yeah. So the hub bit and the spoke bit. So do you want to tell the listeners what the hub bit's all about and what the spoke bit's all about?
So we treat the hub bit, the hub, as in your blog or your website.
Correct.
Blog and website.
It's like the central point, isn't it?
Central point of where all the content that you create sits.
Everything's going back to the hub.
All the helpful content that you create.
Yep.
And
great.
then we have the spoke element. Adam, would you like to share with the listeners what the spoke
element?
element
The spoke is effectively, think of a wheel, and then you've got the spokes that are pushing that content out to the world, but it's always bringing the user ideally back to your website, because that's really where you want them in the end. It's the one spot where you can control and own that space. And so the social media channels, the distribution methods like email, blogging, all these different methods of pushing content out to the world are all about bringing it back to your website. Now, what I like about it, Zaahn, there's not just one spoke. There's actually many spokes, because that does represent, to get your healthy wheel working, that does represent the many, many different ways you can actually communicate using digital marketing tools. And, we see it often where somebody might just have Facebook only. Nothing else.
So each spoke represents a different channel.
And of course, the greater the number of spokes you have, the tougher and stronger your wheel is.
Absolutely. Wow.
I could have been a wheel salesman once. Yeah.
You're really good at this.
Thank you.
So it's not unusual for some hubs for us to see at the moment with only 4 spokes.
Or no spokes.
No spokes.
Yeah. I mean, that's, if you talk about the hub being the website, there are still to this day, believe it or not, 20 years later with websites, where we do hear people say, oh yeah, I just want my website to be a good branding piece. It's like nobody cares about branding pieces. They don't go searching for, show me a good branding piece for spanners on the website, on the Googles. They're actually looking for something that's going to solve their problems.
Help me.
Exactly. So the key to your hubs is about having content that solves problems.
Absolutely.
Agree?
Absolutely agree. And there's lots of different ways that you can make that happen.
Yeah,
it sounds a bit overwhelming, I think, to a lot of people.
Also because the guidance, or the branding thing is an old kick back to the old days where you had to brand to get top of mind recognition, because there was no Google. There was no Google, so people relied on their own memories to work out what they were actually going to buy and how they were going to research stuff. But these days of Google, because there is the ability for them to search anything at any time, it means your content needs to pop up and be helpful, and that's super important.
So what you're saying there is do away with your brand?
Don't do away with your brand, but not get so wrapped up in your brand that it becomes glamorous and gorgeous at the expense of content that helps the user. We've just gone through that experience with the website recently. We took a beautiful website that had no content on it and added content, and the users responded with great enthusiasm, because they were getting information they needed to help them trust that brand and that business and get a solution for their problem.
Fantastic. So once you start making that content that is answering the people's questions and helping your consumers, tell us more about the spokes.
Well, this is where the spokes come into it. And if you just think of immediately thinking of each spoke as like, okay, let's go to Facebook, let's go to Twitter, let's go to Pinterest, let's go to email, let's run with Google Plus, let's also bang out Instagram.
Yep.
Throw in some others. What else would you have in there? LinkedIn.
Well,
obviously.
Depending on your business, you could have Reddit if it was applicable.
Quora's good.
If you were based in Germany, you could have Zing.
Zing, exactly. So there's quite a number of them, but certainly I would be going with at least 4 spokes to hold your wheel up. I think that the reason why is that each different social media platform is different in the way it operates. For example, Facebook is very much a pay-to-play platform, but you still need to be there.
Yeah.
And certainly need to be there to have a presence so you can activate the very powerful Facebook advertising. Interesting to note, episode 42 last week really rocked the house in terms of downloads. People really want to know about Facebook ads for business, and that's a huge part of the arsenal going forward in a digital lifestyle. And I think Twitter is absolutely critical. Very important. And then you get these situations like, Instagram, as you mentioned 1 or 2 episodes ago, comes out with live video.
Stories,
and so anybody making investment building their audiences has now got a free TV station. So
definitely.
I think you've got to have them, and for no other reason that this marketplace is changing at 100 miles an hour, and if you don't have them and suddenly something big comes out and you're not prepared, then you're in big trouble.
Definitely. Good to point out the social channels, and I've referenced this before. I would advise people though not to go and start all 4 at once. If you don't have any social media channel.
Why's that? Do tell.
Well, because it can be a little bit time consuming, and unless you have
it's not the job of a novice, is it? I mean, this is getting harder and harder all the time now.
Hey, don't get me started. Don't get my back up.
Okay.
I
like your back up.
Oh, we've got Susan out the front on the reception. She's going to do our Facebook posting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right.
It's a bit like mums who cut their kids' hair and they're not hairdressers. Hairdressers go to TAFE to learn to be a hairdresser for 4 years.
It takes 3 years. 3 or 4 years.
Like, what makes you think you can cut hair all of a sudden?
Correct. I agree.
So let the professionals do the job, but it's time consuming, and if it's not done correctly, you won't get the results.
And you do hear that a bit where Facebook doesn't work for my business. Oh, okay. So what investment have you made in it? Oh, yeah, Susan at the front who cuts hair for a living. She's doing the posting.
But unless you've got a platform that is going to help you automate it, you really need to make sure you've got your head around how it works to start with before you go, let's go and set it all up and just, dip our toe in the water. Don't half do it all badly.
Correct, yeah. And I think YouTube's another one as well.
YouTube.
The Tubester, second biggest search engine in the world. So that's something which is largely still flying under the radar for a lot of businesses. Massive for so many, but so many also don't have it.
Well, YouTube itself, you just mentioned it then as its own little Google search engine. That itself is a hub. And then from there you have a spoke heading on out.
Correct.
Spokes heading out.
Absolutely.
Video is king. We see that constantly on Facebook. Anything that we post with video on Facebook gets really, really great engagement. So
and I rate the video studio we have, the setup for doing video is one of the most important parts of our marketing going forward. And so business really needs to be saying, right, well, one of our spokes now is a video studio to take advantage of Facebook Live, to take advantage of YouTube videos. Websites are now going to absolutely need video on as many pages as possible.
Yeah.
So creating content with video, the bandwidth is there, the world is ready, and you can just grab your phone and go make something. So absolutely. I think you need to have a studio.
We did a really great experiment last year where we focused very heavily on video for our own brand, but it really was an experiment which has had significant impact for clients across the board, where we are now able to either go to them or they come to us and we do a Facebook Live stream. And that content that we generate can then be spun out into many, many different
And that's
forms.
a good example of HubnSpoke concept working as well, where you create that one bit of content. So the video is the impetus for the content, and then from there we went ahead and created the blog. And this is our Kingdom Live show, where there's over 50 different episodes of this.
More.
And the blog is then created and then pushed out using different communications channels, so Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus, all with different content curated. Now those things get hits, and they're responsible for traffic, and not only that, they solve problems, and so they're responsible for leads. So as long as you're making content that's creating leads, then you're in great shape. As long as you're creating content that solves people's problems, you're in great shape to get leads.
Definitely. And we used to do some brainstorming, and this could probably be our tool of the week, but we had a fantastic little whiteboard that we used as our script, and each day we just took a question that had been posed to us by a customer that week, and we spoke about it for between 10 to 12 minutes. It was very easy to produce.
Yeah, and people I think get hung up about all this stuff too. They're more worried about the production side of things than actually just solving the problem of the customer. Yeah. A customer doesn't super care if the video is done on an iPhone if it solves their problem.
No. And that goes back to your comment about people being so hung up about their brand too. People get very, very precious.
Unnecessarily so.
Yeah.
Because it's also, we really talk about community and making sure that the content you're creating is helping your community.
Definitely.
And people don't care that much about it if it's going to solve their problems.
No. Excellent. Very good. So we've sort of rounded out why we've called the podcast what we've called it, but hopefully that's given some people some, I guess, inspiration to go and look at what their own hub and spoke scenario might be.
And here's a tip to get started, Zaahn. It's always good to have a tip to kick things away. Write down all the questions that you get about your business.
Yeah.
And then start answering those questions. And this is where you create the content, create the blog, the answer, and once you've got the content, then you've got something to say via the communications channels. So,
excellent.
And stop talking about yourself. Don't worry about talking about yourself and how great you are. Let people come to their own conclusion by what they read about you. That's really important, I think.
So that's a really great tip, and I think that people forget about it every now and again. Social media, Facebook, Instagram, they're all social. It's social for a purpose.
Yeah.
So don't get too hung up on always trying to spruik your own business.
Yeah, and I'm not aware of any platforms that self-absorbed.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Like just being completely obsessed with yourself.
Oh yeah.
In a business sense.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's plenty of individuals that do that, but from a business perspective, you've got to be talking about how you solve the customer's problems. No one cares about your special events and stuff that's not relevant to you.
Yeah. So I guess the point there is always be looking to share something that's of value. It doesn't have to be your own.
Yeah, that's a good point. We forget about that a bit. We don't talk about that enough, I don't think, the sharing other people's content that's awesome value.
Well, and one of the big challenges that we find is that people are very hung up on getting more likes. So whether it's more likes on their Instagram page or more likers on their Facebook page, one of the surefire ways to do that is to actually start engaging on the platform that you're on. So as your page, as the Kingdom's business page, go and start interacting with other businesses or people.
Very good point, yeah.
And really get stuck into it. And this is where just having, someone all of a sudden can just adapt themselves to doing a couple of Facebook posts a month.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with that.
That's not what it's about.
No, it's about
there is so much more involved.
Yeah, no, I agree. Excellent flashback episode, Zaahn. That's really interesting stuff.
Go.
Very good. Now, last week we invented this cool idea of hashtag Girl Boss of the World.
Girl Boss of the World.
Which I kind of like the way that was going. So, what would you change if you're in charge of the whole world from a marketing perspective? Because that whole hashtag Girl Boss thing was awesome, resonated with the viewers. Like, what are we going to change today?
I'm glad you liked it so much. And if I was in charge of the world, and massive wish list here, I would make it completely compulsory that every single person in the whole entire world had a Pinterest page.
A Pinterest page?
Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, it is very fascinating.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
a rabbit hole of fun, no question about it.
So much fun.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is multi-pronged. It's a great filing system for your own business stuff.
Yes, in fact, it's the best for that. I agree.
It's also...
we've got campaigns that date back from when we were very much in the old days as an advertising agency.
Yeah.
Loved it a lot. That's a very good point. And it also, Pinterest, when you talk about those advantages that different social media platforms have, Pinterest is in fact one which has a very long shelf life, doesn't it?
Totally.
In terms of once you put a pin up, it can be investigated many, many times over. It doesn't really expire, does it?
Yeah, and it's similarly, you can re-pin. Like, you don't just have to pin something once. So in the same way that I would post a Facebook post more than once, I can pin something more than once. So you can pin it to a different board. If you've created an infographic for a blog on your own website, for example, and
Brilliant.
you then want to go and pin it,
Yeah.
2 weeks' time, you can go and pin it again to another board. Or the same board. And so it keeps showing up in people's news feeds and Pinterest feed.
Great. So
that's mine. Everyone must get Pinterest. It's not all about making
and once again,
beds out of pallets.
But you can.
You can, and if you need a recipe on how to do it, I can show you. Right like that. Bye. Slow cooker recipes, inspiration for your daughter's 8th unicorn birthday.
Perfect, yeah. Sounds like
Plus, there's also some very sensible business tips.
Exactly right. The thing also I like about Pinterest too is that that's a platform that's exploding, and who knows where it's going to end up. So once again, you want to be there just in case. That just in case factor, in case
Just in case. Yeah. Well, and if you're an e-commerce play, if you aren't on Pinterest, you're going to miss out because rich pinning
yeah.
and
so what that means is straight from Pinterest to your e-commerce store. Buy that baby.
Pinterest ads, you got to be there.
Yeah, I agree. So that's
awesome.
Great. So hashtag girlboss, like.
Yeah. Pinterest. What about you? Hashtag girlboss.
If I was going to change the world?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I would actually have IT as pretty much the only subject that's taught at school. Okay, so it's going to lead into the thing I'm liking it, because I think that the need for university students, the need for students in general, and also executives, everybody to be clued into IT in a big way, particularly database management, is very, very important, because data is driving everything these days. And if you look at the social media platforms, they are all about numbers and stats and data, and they're all about managing those different processes. I'm sick to death of seeing flat file Excel spreadsheets, 25, 26 years after Excel was created. There's been so many different ways to display data and manage that. And it comes down to understanding it and using it, and that leads into management being able to walk into a room and confidently say, I understand IT and change management that goes with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the kids of today need to be having 80% of their criteria of learning about IT, a huge amount of information there. And when you talk about something like the Power Editor, for example, the Facebook Power Editor should be taught at school. Like, it's that powerful and that important to a business. It's a huge part of what's going to happen going forward.
So the Power Editor, for people who aren't aware, is effectively a plugin for Facebook.
Yep.
It's an advertising portal that sits outside of Facebook that you then upload your ads and changes to externally from Facebook.
And 2017 businesses that are smart are all over this part of the platform. So if you're going to be a business owner, you need to know the Power Editor. So the entrepreneurs of tomorrow ideally need to have been schooled in this and understanding the way that this data can be moved about. So that's what I'd be changing. I reckon that I know that there is a fair bit of IT already, but I reckon they should just take over the entire curriculum.
Well, it's interesting. There's a lot of focus in education these days about coding, and perhaps it needs to be a little bit more broad than that. More than just coding.
Well, the thing about coding too is it teaches the logical steps involved with something. So, if we're looking at the requirements to work with us in marketing space, we need logical people that can perform logical steps. And when you talk about a platform like HubSpot, you've got logical steps that relate to that process. Talk about MailChimp, WordPress, they're all requiring logic. And more of us every single day as part of our jobs are needing to actually touch on these programs or programs like it.
Very good, very good. All right. What's next? What do we do next? Oh, what are you loving at the moment? What's your favourite?
Well, I'm going to
What's your favourite
shout out to Osmo.
Yes.
Osmo are a company that's doing some very cool stuff with the iPad. It's been around for about 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah.
And they've just released, speaking of coding and the kids, it's very much a kid thing, but they've released a new product called Osmo Coding Jam Game, which is actually mixing coding and music together.
Oh, fantastic.
So kids can use coding skills to make music.
Yeah.
So Osmo Coding, Coding Jam, great, looking forward for it for kids. But this is a good example of how kids can get exposed to coding at a young age and love it and get a real good feel for being logical in their way of thinking.
Very good. I'm a bit stumped on my love this week. I'm trying to think. Do you know what I did do? I did download Uber Eats. I'm getting excited about trying that for the first time. But I did notice over the weekend, and I haven't seen anything else about it to reference, but an article on the news about effectively Uber Click and Collect, where you can go and do online shopping, order your goods, and then an Uber style service will go and pick up your shopping and bring it back to your house.
Great.
So I can go and buy a dress from Country Road in the city.
Yep.
My driver will go and pick it up and bring it back.
Rather than deal with the bloody boxes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Or going, rather than wait for it to be delivered.
Oh, great.
So it's the stock's here in Adelaide, so I can have it. So I'm excited to see what that transpires to.
That's very exciting. So, and I think the key thing here is that retail is becoming more scientific. No longer can you just put your shingle out and have people wait in a line and hope. You've actually got to be quite smart about the way you're doing business.
Well, you do, and I think it whilst the online presence for a lot of businesses is not somewhere they want to play, it's going to get to the point where, as well as having bricks and mortar, you're going to have to.
Yeah,
have
you just don't have a choice. I agree with that. If you don't have the online store working. So definitely come and speak to us about a Shopify store.
Totally.
Straight up plug.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and it goes back to your stat of 90% of the research is done before a human is
Yeah, and
involved.
it's all interwoven into that whole idea of the school kids learning IT, nothing else. It's all related to the world being taken over by IT.
It's your perfect world.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us on the Hub and Spoke. We have had a great deal of fun bringing this episode
Flashback
to
43.
you. Flashback 43, we're calling it. Stay tuned for episode 44. If you do have a question about IT, marketing,
Social,
online presence,
digital,
e-commerce, shoot us an email. You can do that
and
at...
just if you want some help with life, I mean,
You just
we're parents.
interrupted me. You can do that at adam@thekingdom.com.au.
Or interrupt me.
You can also jump on our website and submit a question via our live chat panel, or tweet at us at hub_n_spoke. Thank you, Adam, for your time today in episode 43. See you for 44.
Thanks, son. Bye-bye.
Bye.
For all the new shows, check out www.thekingdom.com.au/HubnSpoke. You have been listening to Adam Steinhardt and Zaahn Johnson of The Kingdom, an inbound marketing agency from Adelaide, South Australia. HubSpot Platinum Partners and the International HubSpot Partner of the Year 2015.